Hello, everyone, and thank you and welcome for coming to today's panel discussion. My name is Violeta Ceremo, and I will be your host today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with CSIA, we are a global nonprofit professional association with over 500 member companies in 35 countries. To highlight just a few of CSIA's many member benefits, the CSIA Best Practices Manual guides control system integration companies in the setup and running of a solid company. These BPs reflect the knowledge gained by SIs over the years and shared freely. Any SI company will benefit from deploying the BPs, but gaining the CSIA certification is a confirmation by a third party that you have deployed them correctly. Maintaining a valid certification ensures that your company stays on a path of continuous improvement. For partner members, CSIA offers an ecosystem to grow their SI programs, understand their customers' pain points, monitor industry trends, and share their thought leadership. A trusted resource of qualified integrators and suppliers, the CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange helps SIs, industry suppliers and manufacturers, and process companies connect and do business. That makes the exchange a first-stop shop where end users can compare integrators, determine which products to use, and have questions answered by specialists in the field. For SIs and partners, it provides a platform to increase your digital presence, support your content and SEO marketing efforts, position your company and C-suite as thought leaders, showcase your expertise, and nurture prospects by providing a trusted, credible source for information about your company and its products. Finally, a reminder that in 2021, you will have increased access to knowledge sharing, community building, and networking throughout the year when you join or renew your CSIA membership. CSIA is committed to delivering extremely relevant content to system integrators while providing partner members access to a highly engaged audience. To that end, CSIA will deliver virtual events on a broad range of topics and experiences, all of which are open to sponsorships. For more information about CSIA, membership, virtual events, and sponsorship and advertising opportunities, contact us at info@staff.controlsys.org or 847-686-2245. And at this time, I would like to introduce today's moderator, Lisa Richter.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Before we get started, a quick housekeeping tip. If you want to chit chat amongst yourselves, which is perfectly fine, please use the chat feature of the platform. If you have a question you'd like to submit to the panel, please use the Q&A. Keeping these streams separate just helps us keep organized and keep track of everything that's going on. We appreciate that. So now I'd like to introduce the panel. And first up is Carolyn. You might take a minute to introduce yourself. Don't forget to take yourself off mute.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carolyn Barron. From PTC Kepware, and I'm the Channel Sales Director for our System Integrator program. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Carolyn. John?
Hey, everybody. John Glensky with Automation Plus, a Plus Group company. I head up our Integration and Information Solutions division here at the Plus Group. And once again, a pleasure to be here as well.
And Frank?
Hello, everyone. Frank Reardon. I'm the founder and CEO of DMC, System Integrator, and also on the CSIA board.
And last but not least, Jose.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jose Rivera, the CEO of CSIA.
So before we get started with the how, I kind of wanted to take a minute just to talk about why we're talking about this topic this morning. So Jose, why don't you kick us off here with some background and context to the discussion?
Happy to do so. So at CSIA, we have recognized the value of diversity and have been working towards having a broader group feel welcomed. So several years ago, we started an initiative to bring in members from outside of the US and make our association a global one. We always have an event for international members attending our conference. Then starting in 2016, we started dedicating a breakfast or a lunch to women in industry, allowing them to get to know each other better and build a network between them. And then a year later, in 2017, we started doing that at the request of one of the younger members of CSIA to set up something for future leaders, and we did that. So these last two groups have been events around the conference, and we need to find now a way to generate them in the virtual space. And so I look for volunteers if anybody wants to lead these efforts. I will also say that in our effort to make CSIA more global, we launched an initiative around 2013, and today we have 50 companies in Latin America that regularly get engaged with CSIA. So let's come to the question of why, right? Diversity makes a lot of sense for a system integration business. So if we go back to the question that keeps system integrators up at night, and the answer is attracting, retaining, and developing talent. If we think about increasing the pool of talent by having a positive attitude and a diverse workforce, it just simply helps you recruit the talent that you're in tight competition with. Then also a diverse workforce at the system integrator would hopefully mirror the growing diversity at their clients, which for business that always relies on relationship building, this is a big plus. And then we all have read that studies that link higher problem identification and solving capabilities of companies when they have a diverse workforce. So for me, these are very important reasons just from the perspective of a system integration company. But then on the other hand, we're part of a bigger society, bigger community, and then having a diverse workforce helps us cope with some problems in our society that we have been painfully reminded this summer with very heightened racial tensions and unrest. And I think that we can have a positive contribution to solving of the problem. So can I have the next slide, please? For the past 3 years, we have been asking our members in our annual survey, are you tracking or are you planning to track workforce diversity on the gender and on the ethnic fronts? So these are the answers. So you can see that around 40% of our system integrators are doing the tracking for gender diversity and a slightly lower amount for ethnic diversity. This year, we included another question, which was about, are you increasing your efforts to create a more diverse workforce? And so more than half said yes. So one of the things that I will say is that this is all encouraging. It's a little bit surprising that we have more members wanting to increase, but not enough, doing the tracking. And as we all know, if you don't track, you cannot measure your progress. But it's a step. And as you can see, we have been doing this for several years. When we put this question in the survey, we were working with a system integrator who had an important initiative. And then the desire was to have 20 questions, which then would have made it impossible for our annual survey. But this is what we were able to get at. So I realized that developing a more diverse workforce is easier said than done, and that it requires quite a lot of effort, and there are big challenges in the way. And this is why this panel was brought together to try to share with the community, our community of system integrators, what these problems, challenges are, and how we can contribute to their solution. So this is what I wanted to share. Thank you very much, and I look forward to having a valuable discussion today.
Thanks, Jose. So Carolyn, you kind of were involved in the early discussions about this panel as well. And aside from this moral imperative and some of the things that Jose just mentioned there, is there a business case for why companies should care about this?
Yeah, so thanks for letting me join. I'm excited to be here. So first I want to say that, diversity has been an underlying issue or something that's been important to our communities and to our workplaces for a long time. I think that, recently there's been more studies about the impact of diversity, and we certainly have seen that at PTC. So we find that, for organizations that have a more diverse board, and I know for these, when you're looking at some of the larger organizations, but they drive innovation, which ultimately impacts the bottom line. So I do have just a couple of, statistics from McKinsey, and those statistics are openly available. But companies with leadership in the top quartile for gender diversity are 25% more likely to see above average profitability. So that's, for the gender side of the equation. Companies with leadership in the top quartile for ethnic diversity are 36% more likely to see above average profitability. And I think another interesting statistic is that by 2050, they're predicting that 55% of the US population will be ethnic minorities. So whites will be the new minority. So I think it just makes, great business sense. And now there's actually statistics that is backing it up, that diversity just makes us better. It could be our superpower.
So talk a little bit about PTC and PTC's journey in with DE&I efforts.
Yeah, so, and I have to say that, I feel so fortunate to be part of the PTC leadership team, and I work for Kepware, so we're, a small portion of that. But there's a lot going on from a PTC perspective. So one thing that's interesting is involvement in the community. So they're, from our PTC headquarters in Boston, but this is something that we are promoting worldwide. But we support the National Society of Black Engineers. We're also involved in the Tech Compact for Social Justice. And there's numerous other organizations that are community focused that we are involved in. So that's one piece of the puzzle. There's certainly open communication from a leadership perspective. So that's top down from Jim Heppelman, through the ranks of our leadership about the importance of diversity. And then there's, we also have these employee research groups, and there's a Black employee research group, there's a women's employee research group, and then there's multiple others. We're all encouraged to participate in those, and we do. So that's, that's another piece of it. And just developing rules around communicating with honesty, integrity, and empathy, I think are some of the key things.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Frank, what about DMC? Do you currently have any initiatives in the DE&I space? And if so, what are they and how'd you get there?
Sure. So we started our journey a few years back, and our initial lens was increasing our workplace diversity. And we decided we were going to pilot recruiting at SWE, Society of Women Engineers, events both at a national and college level. And what we soon realized when we were starting on our journey, that just aiming for diversity wasn't enough, that we had to actually get into inclusivity and equity, that we needed some more foundational things to support our recruiting efforts. And so task forces were created, and getting a lot of different internal voices, which helped out a lot. So the first thing we did is we had some very passionate people that joined our initiative internally, which was and is great. That getting internal buy-in has been really important. We've done anti-bias trainings and exercises. Everyone at the company required to take formal discrimination, harassment, and sensitivity training annually. We just recently completed a 3-part series on unpacking racism, which is really eye-opening personally and for the company. We have, similar to what Carolyn was talking about, ambassador programs for underrepresented groups. We put our DEI presence and our statement on our website. And I think probably one of the biggest things is to keep listening and keep the conversation going. This isn't well, we started this and we had the seminar back in July, and we're done. This is ongoing, and it's the beginning, not the end.
So talk to me a little bit about why you even started this. Like, what was the thing that got you thinking about it, or the impetus?
Sure. Specifically, actually, I was meeting with a couple of visiting our New York office, meeting with a couple of newer female engineers, and they put together a very detailed proposal about starting the SWE recruiting efforts, and then it just extended from there. And then, of course, with everything that's happened in society. Over the summer, for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so forth, it should just been amplified and continued.
Thank you. John, what about Automation Plus and the Plus Group's efforts? Why did you become interested in the issue? And what is Automation Plus currently doing to recruit a diverse workforce?
Thank you, Lisa, for the question. And similar to the other panelists, let me say how happy I am to participate in this roundtable on such an important topic in today's world. Our team, we recognize diversity in the workplace as a holistic business strategy, and that started about 5, 6, 7 years ago, within the executive team. We realized both through some statistics that, Carolyn mentioned, and then also some initiatives Frank discussed, that it really does drive productivity, creativity, loyalty, and most importantly, innovation, right? In our industry, you're selling yourself. So you have to have that innovation, that capability. And, if a company is only as good as its employees, especially in the service industry, which is what we are, and it stands to reason that a great deal of effort should be spent devoted to hiring the most talented individuals, regardless of background. So in terms of, what we've done, similar to the other two panelists, we've implemented training programs, we've added it within, our core values. But, for us, being a mid-sized firm, one of the first actions we did was add an employee development and diversity director to our executive team, right? Showing to the employees that this is truly important, all the way up to the top. We also created a women's advisory board, or female engineer advisory board. And this really came internally, right? This wasn't an initiative so much from the executive team as it was, engaging everyone within our organization and how can we get better? And this is one of those items that came up, and it's been really beneficial and impactful, I think, for all of us within the organization. And additionally, we intensified our efforts in the last 3 years specifically by engaging local universities and the community as a whole. Across all of our offices in the US, we're promoting that to drive diversity, both with their incoming students, but also retention of their existing students, and most specifically with the University of Cincinnati, which is where our headquarters is.
Thanks. Frank, back to you. In your experience, what are the biggest struggles when it comes to recruiting underrepresented groups?
Sure. So we recruit primarily and hire primarily from new college grads, both at the undergraduate and graduate levels. And we focus our recruiting at top schools in the country. And first challenge is that underrepresented groups are even more underrepresented at these schools. So it makes it more challenging. And establishing connections with groups at these schools. So, of course, I mentioned SWE, but NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers, SHPE, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, has been something that has moved things forward quite a bit. Having a diverse recruiting team is a challenge. So whether it's a female recruiter or a person of color recruiter, that's something that we don't have a lot of engineers who are people of color. We've got a higher percentage that are women, but that's only one factor. I don't want to just say that, well, if we've got a female recruiter, that's going to solve the problem, because we really want to have a female engineer recruiter that's available. That's something that is just challenging with the size of our company. And then, the best students are always in high demand, and large companies have very big diversity programs and targets, and the competition is even stronger and higher. So we just have to be as good, if not better, but both in our reach out efforts and in what we have to offer versus, let's say a company like PTC. That's a lot of students that are graduating, they say, yeah, I'd love to work for a company like PTC. I'd love to work for a company like Google and Facebook, and they all have targets. And we're competing with the same students. It's not easy, but that doesn't mean that it's not something that we shouldn't do.
So, John, you mentioned you work with the University of Cincinnati and local communities. Explain a little bit more about that on the ground. Like, what are the tactics? What does that look like in real life?
Yeah, no, certainly. So, for us, UC, University of Cincinnati, and how we engage with them kind of started in the traditional way integrator or a larger firm might, and then it really progressed in phases. And so that's probably the best way to describe kind of how our relationship happened, and then driving into the diversity component of it, which really exploded after we had that initial engagement. So, it started with us really just reaching out to the university, their head of development, and it became a partnership in a traditional way, right? We would send our engineers to the university pro bono to engage with chemical engineers, electrical engineers, computer engineers, really on what life is like, what's it like to be an engineer. Similar to Frank, we hire out of universities for a reasonable amount of our resources as well. And it was about driving a student connection. And so that kind of expanded out into how can we help the university in a traditional manner. We reached out to a couple industrial firms, Rockwell, ABB, how can we drive a partnership? And it drove more and more connections, more and more discussions about how we could do more, right? So then the next phase was, what's the next step? So we started guest lecturing, and that got us more involved with the students on the entrepreneurship side. And within the entrepreneurship side of the College of Engineering, it tends to be more diverse. So then it drove an additional opportunity for our team to join an advisory board for the dean of the College of Engineering. And this was exciting, right? It's, how can you impact the university to drive students that can really help our industry? But it was really interesting because in those meetings, a key point of discussion, and kind of back to Frank's point, was always how to attract female and underrepresented minorities to the university, specifically the College of Engineering, and specifically electrical, computer, chemical, those trades or those disciplines that tend to feed into, integrators. And so how do you engage them into the STEM field of study and consider those careers in addition to just getting them into the college? And for us and our team is very eye-opening, right? To see the struggles that this university is the second largest university in Ohio, behind Ohio State. They have an entire team focused on this, right? Led by a development director specifically for this purpose, and they were struggling. And for us, you see this is the main talent pipeline for our industry, right? Regardless of if you hire from an existing manufacturer or it's a professional hire, everyone comes from the university in most cases within our talent engagements. And so it kind of opened our eyes to this is a way that we could really drive diversity for all integrators, increasing our overall talent pool that we could all access. So, once we saw that, once we were able to really see the struggles they had, it's how can we help? And so now we're actively working with UC on multiple levels in terms of ideas, innovations about attracting that diverse talent, but more importantly, engaging them early. One of the struggles the universities have, and from my background as well, is that freshman to sophomore year or first to second year, a lot of people will transfer out of an engineering discipline. And so how do you drive that spark, right? That excitement, the curiosity that I think all of us on this call have, right? That's how we got into engineering in many cases. And educate those students on the different career paths that they can go into, right? It's not just Google, like Frank said, right? I mean, there's other opportunities. There's all of us on the call that can be part of this and drive those career paths regardless of background and show how they can succeed, right? You want to drive that diversity, you got to show how that can fit within a successful career. And so that's really kind of how that engagement grew.
Thank you. Frank, what about you? What more practical advice do you have about increasing that diversity hiring?
Probably one of the things that was a little eye-opening for me and for our team, the anti-bias training, is just understanding that just because someone doesn't fit all the typical characteristics of or the people that we've hired in the past doesn't mean that they won't be successful. And we all have biases, and bring that to the forefront and understanding that they're there and that they shouldn't be a filter just because someone doesn't look, act, think like you doesn't mean that they can't be successful. So that's one of the bigger things that I think has helped. Putting our values and diversity front and center on our website. You go to our careers page, and we've got a diversity page there, so it shouts out to people to say, yeah, we are an inclusive culture, that this is a part of who we are. We have started with NSBE scholarships. Stay tuned. That is something that we can hopefully do well by doing good. Certainly we think that providing students, people of color with financial foundation will help, but it also will help us target more Black students specifically in that case. And then, like I said, increasing the diversity of our recruiting teams. That's a challenge for us because we've got 8 offices across the country. We recruit at 24, 25 different schools this year, and we don't have a dedicated recruiting team. Our engineers are doing the recruiting because we found that to be most effective, but we do have a lens where we try to make the decision wherever practical. We have underrepresented groups that are part of the career fairs and or the interviewing teams.
John, what other advice would you give companies trying to diversify and engage with these non-traditional partnerships?
Another good question. I think if a company is interested in diversifying their workforce by partnering either within the community or with a university, like we were able to achieve, I think it all starts with a phone call. I don't think it's really truly difficult, that initial engagement. For us, and I mentioned it previously, it was just a phone call to the head of development for the college, right? They're always looking, they being the universities, for outside partnerships, engagements, in a way that they can help the community and specifically industry, right? Because they're trying to get their students hired. I mean, that's the end game for those universities, in addition to the education and the research. And I think that's an easy way to start. Right, and they'll gladly take your call, and they'll probably ask you for money the first time, but once you get through the 3rd or 4th time of them asking for money, then you can really engage on something different. It's interesting, one of the benefits that our team saw with this engagement with the university was really the interaction and the connection with the students specifically. For us in consulting, it's not all generational, but there are a lot of those more seasoned engineers within our team. And so having the ability to be exposed to the engineers at the University of Cincinnati with a diversity of background, of thought, really helped drive the discussion around diversity of culture, bridge the generational gap. And it's really led to great results in our company, and specifically engaging, mentioned a little earlier with Carolyn, into our clients, right? Because our clients are also tackling this in a big way. Right, and it's critical for our entire industry, not just CSIA and integrators, but manufacturing as a whole. And so for us, as you look at the future and we set the stage, you've got to find new ways to learn and lead. And this is one that really can grow our talent, because you can have the seminars, you can have the training, but when you have a connection, that to me is when you learn. And those connections with those students, our engineers are learning in backgrounds, diversity, generational that they don't, right? And now some of our more seasoned guys text more, which is a great side benefit. But all kidding aside, it's really driving that connection. And for the students, I think it makes an educational experience even greater, right? It connects with those starting their journey to see that the future of engineering, the future of where you can go, is a diverse environment with diverse teammates, and in a way that everyone can succeed together.
I think it's interesting that you brought up this generational thing, because I think companies are still even just struggling with that, right? You have your old guard and your new guard, and they sit at separate lunch tables. So that's an interesting point. I hadn't even really thought about that. Carolyn, back to you. What advice would you have for organizations grappling with these issues?
Yeah, well, I just have to say, I mean, gosh, the comments from Frank and John, and just from my experience, like, we're all on the same page, even though PTC is a larger organization and maybe coming from a different perspective. But I think everything that people have mentioned, it's taking one step. So it seems so overwhelming, but if you can just take one step, and obviously collaborating within the community. But the other piece of it is having those open lines of communication internally. And I can't say how much, not just from being an employee at PTC, but just as an individual, the importance of having those open, honest conversations, because some of them have been tough, but it's really put diversity, in the limelight. So it's not just an HR motion, it's an organizational motion. I mean, I think we're all on board and we all feel passionate. Obviously participating in this conversation is fabulous, but we're all feeling passionate about, the importance of diversity and what it does to us as a society, and then also what it can do to our organizations.
Frank, what about you? Any final advice?
Probably just like I mentioned earlier, that this is a journey. There's no destination. We're never done with this. Just like we're never done with employee career development. We're never done with satisfying customers. It's just got to be ingrained into our everyday lives versus just being a program du jour.
So I've been hogging the question asking here, and I want to turn it over for a minute to the audience to see if they have any questions. Feel free to populate that Q&A box down there. And Jose's going to kind of curate this section for us. So Jose, over to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this panel discussion, and it generated in my head several questions. So while I'm waiting for the participants to place their questions in the Q&A box, I will go ahead and ask some of the questions that I was formulating for myself. And this one I would like to dedicate it first to Frank, which is, you mentioned that DMC recruits at the top schools in the country, and you feel that underrepresented communities or groups are underrepresented there too. So I would like you to please separate female from underrepresented minorities. And on the topic of females, just reflecting on my background, I'm an electrical engineer, and I remember when I went to school that electrical engineering and mechanical engineering, we had very few females, but it was different for chemical and civil engineering, who had a much bigger representation of females. So that is one part, and so I'll let you answer, Frank.
So I guess if you're asking regarding female engineers at the schools we recruit from, or people of color, I'm not exactly sure what your question is.
So it's, to me, it's like underrepresented groups when you do your recruiting at the best university. So one part of the answer should be females, and I think that from my experience way back when I went to engineering, the sample, forget about ethnic, it's just like on the females, it was a smaller sample, and then separate effort, on ethnic recruiting at these top schools. Sure.
So let me first talk about something that is puts up an inherent challenge. At University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, which is certainly top 10 engineering program in the country. It's fantastic. The program is wonderful, and it works great for our Chicago office to be able to hire from there. At UIUC, on their webpage for the entire university, I believe that there's 5% Black students at the entire university. When you go to the College of Engineering, they actually don't even put the number of Black students in their statistics, which makes it very hard to hire Black students from there, because there aren't a lot. That is one of the reasons why we've connected with NSBE on a national level. That is one of the reasons why we've piloted going to Howard University, historically Black college university member, because the sample size is small. I mean, very small. If you start saying, okay, if you've got 5% at the university, well, there's probably fewer at the College of Engineering, and even fewer, we target electrical and mechanical engineers. Then we also target the top 20% of the class. So the pool that we can recruit from is very small. And the female side of things, thankfully, the pool is a bit bigger. It's order of magnitude of a low 20% in the College of Engineering. That gives us a better fighting chance to find and hire more female engineers. And we've been doing a better job of that over the last several years, even before we started our initiative, just because we think that there's a bigger pool to hire from. But it's a challenge either way. The number of underrepresented, whether it's female or underrepresented minority groups, there's just no getting around it. That it is a numbers game that isn't easy to win, but we're in it for the long term, and doing everything we can that doesn't change any of our hiring criteria.
All right, thank you. So now let me move on to a question for John. And I really like what you're doing in terms of establishing a connection at the University of Cincinnati, because one of the things that I have found is that the term system integration is not known. So you're competing when you're hiring against companies for which the students have an immediate connection to, for example, Google, Apple, all these ones, right? Or where they can easily understand what they are and what they produce. But for a system integrator, first question, what is it, And so by you going there and giving an example, you're driving, some vision of what this could be and creating the possibility. So thinking bigger, not just you, but the entire system integration community. What can we do to make this option, career option, a viable one that is recognized by engineering students?
Thank you, Jose. Great question. And to your point about the system integration, the first time we went down there, I went personally, and I'm talking to the students, and they asked what we did. And I said, well, we tie things together, we program factory devices, we connect with, software in the sky. And they said, oh, well, you do programming. And I said, well, you do so much more. And, to your point about just broadening what that career path is critical. When I was a kid at school, I didn't even know consulting existed as an option, right? I co-opted a large automotive supplier, and I went to school near Cincinnati, so I wanted to go work for P&G or maybe Toyota or another big manufacturer because I was interested in the manufacturing. So I think, what can the industry do is just engagement. Hiring, one of the things that we strive for is to have a few co-ops on staff every semester. And that's an area that we can really then share with those co-ops through experience what an integrator does, what that job and career path is. And so through experience, that helps, because then they go back, they talk to their students, right, at a party on Friday night, what are you doing? And they can explain it in a way that, we can try to explain to them, but coming out of the student's own words is way better. And to try to show, I think, the second piece would be that it's a sustainable career path. There's been a lot of discussion, I think, in the last 10, 15 years about how manufacturing is dying. it's not dying in so much as it's becoming automated, right? The globalization is driving that component specifically amongst a lot of manual operations. And that's where we fit, right? That is us to a large extent, right? Is how to make somebody's life better. You know, people ask me, oh, you take jobs with automation. I say, we make jobs better. And so that's what I always try to impart with the students. And so I think the two things would be, if you can, you know, hiring those co-ops if it makes sense. And then the second piece would be really showcasing how it's a career path, whether that's on your website or maybe it's a guest discussion at a university on what you do as an industry. They're always happy to have people come down to talk to the students, specifically the first and second year students.
Excellent. So then I will share something. CSIA is a member of the Automation Federation, which is a group of, you know, of associations dealing in the automation space. It's not just technical. Some of them are big time into training and developing even at the level of technicians. And what we find is that their big challenge for workforce development is just to make the automation field known, you know, and hopefully starting with young kids, you know. So I'm not kidding. They have a coloring book, you know, about for kids to understand, which is at a bigger picture in our country and developing economies. This is all drive towards STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, right? And so then it's the whole society has a bigger demand of STEM. And now we want to be system integration community or automation community. We want to be identified as this is interesting, this is exciting, and this is what I go for, such that we have a bigger supply of candidates that get prepared. One of the things when I talk to some system integrators, they tell me that when they hire, they get disappointed because they, in my opinion, are expecting somebody that is trained exactly for their job. And I think that they want to narrow it such that they can hit the ground running the first day. And I think that this is not the goal of university that wants to build your learning ability, you know, think bigger. And yes, it will take a little bit more of like getting on board with what you do and your processes, but hopefully you have like a bigger thinking and problem solving capability. So now I would like to ask Carolyn, you know, in terms of PTC and Kepware, and what is their experience as a vendor of equipment and solutions, how they go about presenting themselves on their recruiting efforts. You're a much bigger company than most of our system integrators, but still, I think it's a small one compared to the bigger universe of the Apples, Googles.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I think even though we're, you know, kind of a mid-sized organization, we still have the resources to invest in things like a chief diversity officer. And that allows us to kind of promote ourselves as being a culturally diverse organization. So I think that, you know, it's the outreach within the community. I think, you know, Jim Heppelman recently did some collaboration with MIT where he was speaking about diversity, and there were other members of the PTC leadership team. So I think, you know, that kind of allows us to promote our organization in addition to doing all the internal work. And then that's, you know, the collaboration of our diversity teams and our HRs team allows us to, you know, be kind of in the forefront from a recruiting perspective. So it gives us an edge. So not to say that it's perfect. I'm sure we're struggling. You know, it all looks great, but just like everybody else, it's not easy. And the pool is not, you know, we wish there were more people to recruit from. But yeah, it certainly, you know, it certainly gives us a little bit of an edge. And I think the opportunity for us to recruit remotely now, I think everybody's, you know, considering how does this impact us in the future, will give us, you know, more opportunities to do that.
Very good. I think we're getting to the conclusion of our event. I don't have any more open questions here coming from our panel. Do we want to wrap this up?
Yep, let's do that. So Violet, if you do me a favor and put up that additional resources slide, if you have it handy. I just put together just a small list. There's so much information out there, but I wanted to give people at least a starting point if they're interested in the topic or want to explore it a little bit further. Just send me an email and I can send you this deck with this list. I'm happy to do that. And then I also, Violetta, please advance the slide for me. I also put people's contact information on here in case you want to have a one-to-one discussion with any of the panelists or some sort of sidebar discussion. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you if you have more questions about what they're doing and about the topic in general. And that's all I have for today. I appreciate everybody joining us. It's such an interesting and important and timely topic. Just thanks for joining us.
And on behalf of CSIA, I would like to thank the panelists for this informative discussion. I'd also like to thank all of those attending. We hope you found this virtual event informational. When you close out of this event, a link will pop up to a brief evaluation. We would appreciate it if you would take a moment to share your feedback with us. And we'd also like to remind you that a recording of this will be available for viewing within 30 days of this event. So please visit the CSIA website to view this recording or a past webinar you may have missed. And finally, be sure to bookmark the CSIA events calendar so you don't miss any upcoming events. This concludes our program for today. Once again, thank you for joining us and have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.